So given that you've got more that AI lens, what's your take?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. You've seen that this year there is a designated, LVCC in North Hall. There is designated robotics arena, and then to me it feels like it's the same as drones and VR. So in the very beginning, you've seen this huge bubble, but it was actually a inflection point disguised as one, right? So there is definitely a huge opportunity because of the high certainty. So there is tons of money, investments, entrepreneur. You think about we like bubbles. Every 18 months, there is a bubble because bubble drives demand for investors, right? Because there is no bubble, there's no professors coming out of Ivy League, Stanford startup companies. So that was definitely lead to some failures. For example, when VR was a hype and drone was a hype, end of the day, if your demo works, but economically it doesn't work, or, the maintenance, there's no maintenance. So eventually a lot of companies will fail, and adoption rates was very, very low back in the days. But now Meta Ray-Ban, it really took off these days. So I think that's we are experiencing the same as robotics again. But what makes it different is that this time there is this world's model, there is physical intelligence, and Professor Fei Li just gave a speech yesterday, the day before. So that actually drives this new hope that robotics this time will actually more generalized. And then I think it makes sense because this world is made for humans. So I think it makes sense this time.
So when we think about the AI side of things, where do we need to put the money? And how do we make sure that we are speeding innovation?
Yeah, so there is so many different pillars to make a so-called humanoid robot work. And then one of the most important things, why Tesla was really promising, right? So their PE ratio was over 200 because of the data that they had. And then I think since they actually moved from machine learning to end-to-end computer vision, they even disabled sensors, right? So actually, their accuracy rate is actually getting much better, and then I use FSD every day, and then because if you are consumer facing, and then you need to get data, and real data, fresh data. So whoever can get the most data, you have a better chance to win. So that's why we actually, as an investor, and then we actually focus on one of the pillars we heavily invested is data. So we invest in companies like Max Insight and a lot of companies that they are actually feeding data, providing real data. They actually build robo farms to collect data, to do one thing repetitively very well, and then feed those data to those foundation model companies. So that's the huge promise there. And then, but that's definitely a lot of research. And then definitely, it requires different type of investors, like corporate investors, family offices, and even, Morgan Stanley, so-called gold channel these days, like Elon Musk, and then you hardly heard endowment fund or pension fund investing in those type of companies, and you heard Morgan Stanley, there's a lot of individuals putting money in this field because the promise, right, is certainty there. But and then another pillar I think is very interesting is single task robots do one thing very, very well, because that doesn't require so much research, but you have to do a lot of tedious work, dirty work. You have to treat operation also as product, and then not just the demo itself. Like one of the, company that we invested early called Arctic Coffee, which also have a booth. And they had a booth everywhere. They had a booth at GDC, and then, at a lot of hedge fund events, because they have over 30 stores, and they are making this barista arm. So they make gourmet coffee. And not just it's fancy to look at, but it tastes good. So it's not really a hard, so much advanced, but they treat operation as products. That's very, very important.
And as we were preparing this panel, and also Kevin mentioned it a little bit before, we were discussing where to invest. Is it about the software side? Is it about the hardware sides? And we've got different points of view here in the room. So do you want to start? So do we invest in software, in hardware? You are investing primarily on the software side of things.
Yeah, I think the beauty of investment is we all have a different investment theme. That is great, right? And then, but for Amino, because of the gene, and we were, early employees at Google and Facebook, so we're researchers, so we understood data. So that's why our investment theme has always been data mode and network effect, meaning that I'm just a startup. I'm not like Shein, they can spend like millions or tons of millions a day to do advertisement, right? So how do I grow? Network effect. You don't need to spend that kind of ads money, right? So that's why, that's what we actually focus on. We were early investor, a lot of, Chime Financials and, Rapid and then Wise, the robotic companies. But I feel like these days, because of the recent acquisition, and two of them, right? Recently, like Grok, and also the other one is Manus, right? $1 billion acquisition. I feel like right now, if you wanted to win in the agent space, not the data from the customers, it's the data inside your own operation. So really more like a craftsman, like the success of TSMC. It's not like, I got all this like Google, Facebook, I got a lot of the user data, that's why my product's better. No, it's because I'm able to actually hire 100 people. I mean, probably in Meta or, in Gemini or OpenAI, the one that actually, number of engineers are working on deliver a PowerPoint, maybe just single number, but as a startup, I can hire hundreds of people. And then just working on this, I'm not, afraid of failure, but I will actually use, labor intensive actually to actually make it work. Yeah, agree. Like I think at the NVIDIA keynote, synopsis, right? So simulation nowadays is really, really important, and we also invest in chip agents, and even like nano, like really tiny little chips can be simulated. Actually accelerated. So it could totally be a Foxconn on the cloud. Yeah, I think, taking advantage of China, you don't need to invest in Chinese companies. We based in Silicon Valley, and then we invest in founders that actually, they navigate how to actually, navigate this geopolitical, not us. So we don't need to do that. As an investor, as equity investor, we're lucky. So we just invest in Silicon Valley companies, and then they can actually, work with all those mature technological companies from China and supply chains, took advantage of that. And then if there is any changes, and then one of our investment Wise, and they're based in Seattle, but they used to have the manufacturing in China when the tariff went up. And they literally posted on LinkedIn that, oh my gosh, the tariff is more than the cost of my product now. So, it's really, another thing is, I feel like, another robotic company that we invested, they provide data, but they also upsell the robots actually made in China to here. They have to navigate all these things. So I think that's, as an investor, we're lucky that way. But on the other hand, we also invested in, areas like Japan, or like one of the companies, a Taiwanese from Stanford, and then he actually, it was a laboratory spin-off from Stanford, and then he really fascinated about Japanese culture, so he actually went to Japan. And this company is going IPO in Japan's Matters Board. It's called Sesame Smart Lock. So basically, the single, people, they don't, oftentimes they don't actually get this, to actually make your customer's life easier just by a little bit, and then you can be a hit product. So for their product, you don't have to do the installation. You just glue on the netbot of your door, and then you can use your phone to open the door, right? So it turned out that a lot of short-term rental companies in Japan, they're using this to manage their properties.